This is one game, and we understand it's one game, but it was a big game. And I know we talked about that as last week, is you get to be on this stage against a top 10 opponent, very talented team, and but we wanted to be the aggressor, and we were.
Hello and welcome in. It is always college football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy, and we appreciate so much those of you coming to us today. Just in an effort to be fully transparent, because we love college football and we love our listeners. We have such a loyal and educated listener base. We don't want to try to mislead. I am taping this show on Sunday, August 31st. We normally take our Sunday takeaways and we do them on Monday, the 10 things we've learned. We do that on Monday's show. We're not doing that today. Why? Well, because I'm calling a game tonight. And with the magic of post-production, you will see a remarkable change from me. If you're watching on the ESPN College Football YouTube page, I will somehow morph from a hoodie that I'm currently wearing into a suit with no tie at some point in this show. So just be ready for that. It's an Easter egg. For those of you that join us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page, enjoy. For those of you that are with us on the podcast, we always greatly appreciate it. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. We do this every single week. We're not going to be throwing fiery hot takes. That's not what we do. We want to approach this as a constructive opportunity for teams that struggled. Guess what? You can lose week 1 or week 2 and make the college football playoff. You can even go all the way to the national championship game like Notre Dame did last year. So for those that are coming in an effort to find us just torching the world for Texas and Bama and Clemson, you probably need to go elsewhere. We're here to offer a little bit of levity, a little bit of perspective, and to try to be constructive. Okay. Always appreciate those of you that rate the show, subscribe to the show, follow the show, support the show. Also check us out on social media at AlwaysCFB. All right. 10 things we learned from week 1 of college football. Let's kick it off with number 1. Takeaway number 1. You're going to love this one. I just said I wasn't going to do hot takes or fiery takes, but this one might be the most controversial we've ever had. I think you'll understand why here in just a moment. Ohio State's path to a national championship looks familiar. That's takeaway number 1. What does it look like? Now, when I think Ohio State and I think national championships, whether it be the 2014 season, last season, even dating back to some of the great teams that came up short of winning a national championship, but still really good, I think about offensive firepower. I think about explosiveness at wide receiver. I think about an unstoppable attack with passing it, running it, what have you. I think about Ezekiel Elliott, right? I think about Jeremiah Smith. However, this version of Ohio State, based on what I saw yesterday, their path to a championship might look a lot like Michigan 2 years ago. Oh, wait, did you just compare Ohio State to Michigan? You can't do that. That's the team up north. Hear me out. Okay, it's a compliment, by the way. It's not negative whatsoever. But based on what I witnessed yesterday, Ohio State is going to win with their defense this year. Doesn't mean they can't win with their offense, much like Michigan 2 years ago. Michigan had an offense that could score, but they didn't play that way. They really just kind of allowed their defense to kind of dictate. They allowed their run game to kind of dictate. Their quarterback was there, but served more as a game manager than a guy that was going to take over the game. And they just collapsed. They suffocated the teams that they played. I think that's the recipe for Ohio State this year. And watching what I watched yesterday with what they have in the back end defensively, I thought the secondary was outstanding. I thought the relentless pressure and pursuit up front was remarkable. I thought the way they tackled was amazing. I mean, how many missed tackles were there in the game from the Buckeyes? Very few. As I went through, I'm like, goodness gracious, these guys, is this week 8 or is this week 1? Because I feel like when I'm watching week 1, I'm seeing missed tackles, guys bouncing off of running backs, guys bouncing off of wide receivers. They tackled incredibly well. So I think their path to a national championship runs through their defense. Thought Matt Patricia did an amazing job. He was fantastic. Mixing coverages, making things a little complex, getting a little bit of zone, getting a little bit of man, mixing up some pressures, doing some shifts and some adjustments, some games. I thought there was some really, really smart defensive plan. And the way their back end triggered when the ball was released was awesome, man. They super sticky in coverage all game long. Offensively, I think Ohio State remains a work in progress. And that's not a knock. It's that Julian Sayin is young. And I thought he did a really nice job yesterday of just being smart. Don't get impatient. Don't try to do too much. Just distribute. Take what the defense gives you. Get the ball out. He did all those things really, really well. He had to make really one big throw in the game. And frankly, it was a better catch than it was throw, and that was the touchdown to Carnell Tate on the left-hand side. That feels a lot like Michigan, doesn't it? Hey, we're going to run the ball. We're gonna try to get it to a wide receiver or two. We're going to try to get to a tight end or two. We're going to involve the tight ends very much in the passing game. But you know what? If we punt it on this drive, it's not the end of the world because our defense is going to get us back in about 2 seconds, right? That, I think, is the recipe. So it might take 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks for this Ohio State offense to maybe click into form. And hopefully they will. Hopefully they'll get there. But here in the near term, if the national championship was being played, I don't know, September 13th, which it's not, I think Ohio State's defense will have to carry them for a little while. So, hey, guess what? We found out yesterday they can. So very, very good thing. And hey, props to Julian Sayin too. First quarterback to make their first career college start against an AP ranked number 1 team. First quarterback to win that matchup since Jim Harbaugh. That was when Michigan beat top-ranked Miami in 1984. In the last 20 years, quarterbacks that were making their first start, 0-18. Now they're 1-18 because Julian Sayin. So well done there. Let's go to takeaway number 2. Texas is going to be fine, but they have a few things they need to address. Okay, we will start with Arch Manning. He left some plays on the field. Going back, watching the tape, diving into it a little bit, I thought there were some good things that he did, to be honest with you. Like there were some really positive things. Positive thing number 1, the way he kind of moved in the pocket, I thought he stayed in the passing posture. I thought he negotiated the rush pretty well. I thought there were some things that he would have probably liked to have had back. Did throw into coverage a couple times, but that's not really that uncommon for a guy that's playing against tight coverage. You're going to have to throw into coverage from time to time. There were just a couple throws were a touch late. And there were a couple opportunities down the field that he passed up on. And that, I think, is something that needs to get addressed as he continues to move forward. Hey, this guy's coming open. Don't give up on it. And I'm sure it was probably preached to him throughout the week leading up last week. Hey, don't try to be a hero. Don't try to take unnecessary risk. Don't throw the ball downfield and wait for something to come open when you have a guy underneath that might be able to catch and run. I'm sure that was probably the point of emphasis. Hey, don't lose this game for us, right? Don't make a critical error. But I do think as he gets more comfortable with the speed of the game, the way he's going to have to drop back and kind of allow things to uncover, finding some rhythm in the passing game, I think he's going to be just fine. Here's the thing that was a little concerning. I didn't love some of the throws they were asking him to execute. There were a couple tricky throws. The first throw is a good example. On the move, guy in his face. He's got to kind of throw a fadeaway jumper 25 yards down to the right sideline. Like I think they can do a better job of getting him in rhythm early in the game. The other thing, looking at this Texas offense, they have to have some answers in the red zone. And obviously, right, they had a couple of drives stall in the red zone. And that's been a problem last year. But let's just look at their red zone plan yesterday against Ohio State. It was really kind of quarterback run, wasn't it? It's like, all right, let's run Arch. Here we go, inside the 20. Here we go, let's run Arch. He's not Cam Newton. He's not Michael Vick. He's not Thomas Castellanos with his legs, right? He's a good runner, but he's a runner that's going to really kind of thrive in the open field. Like he's not one of those guys that's going to be able to go and get you a lot of tough yardage. He's not going to be able to plow over or mow over defenders. He's not a guy that's super twitched up that's going to be able to make guys miss in the event in which he has to dance. So I don't think I don't think he broke a single tackle in the red zone. And that's a testament to Ohio State's defense, but also it probably is going to force Steve Sarkisian and this offensive staff to kind of look in the mirror and say, hey, all right, we got to find ways to get the ball on the ground in the run game with a guy that can really create with his legs. Arch can keep you honest with his legs. He can break you down with his legs, but he's probably not the guy I want to have 35 red zone carries this season. So they got to find an answer there. Here's the most jarring thing for me when watching Texas was the lack of separation that they were able to get on the perimeter with their wide receivers. There was very, very little space between them and the best defenders for Ohio State. I looked at the coverage. I thought the coverage was excellent. So like I said, where one thing was a struggle, give credit to the other side. Ohio State deserves credit for their coverage. But they have to be able to manufacture space for Arch Manning. They have to be able to create separation with their wide receivers. And if they don't, it's going to be tough sledding. Now, how many defenses will they see this year that are as good as Ohio State? I don't know. But I do know this. I do know that they could see Ohio State again, and they're going to have to be a little more creative with stacks, bunches, alignments, motions, what have you, to try to create extra space for the passing attack going forward. So that's something to monitor, but that was something I did not expect. I thought they'd be able to create some separation. They didn't do so very regularly, and that could be a problem down the road if they don't get it addressed. Takeaway number 3. LSU is a legitimate national championship contender. Now, everyone want to talk about Brian Kelly. Everyone want to talk about the offseason personnel additions. Last year, we spent a lot of time on whether or not this team would be willing to run the football enough, whether or not this team would be good enough on the defensive side to potentially elevate the program. But just watching that game back, the level of physical dominance that we saw with their defensive front against a Clemson team that has not really been pushed around a lot. I mean, Clemson has not traditionally been a crazy, super physical offensive line. That's not really what they are. Clemson has thrived in their best years with elite weapons, elite quarterback play, and kind of a perimeter-based offensive attack. But they haven't really had a lot of liabilities up front. You know what I mean? And I looked at this LSU defense, man, and they were just getting after it. The way that they were able to control the ball. Last year, they were a high-flying attack. Garrett Nussmeier's going to have to throw it all over the yard. He's going to have to throw for 350 and 3 touchdowns for them to win the game because they were going to be one of the worst rushing attacks in the SEC. I think they averaged 116 yards a game on the ground. That is very different this year. We saw more, I feel like, designed carries from Garrett Nussmeier in this game, whether it's zone read pulls or whatever. We saw more designed carries from Garrett Nussmeier in this game than I think I did at any point last year combined. So I think what I appreciate most about what I saw from LSU was an intentional priority to create a little more balance offensively, to take some of the pressure off the passing game, take some of the pressure off the offensive line, and a concerted effort on defense to be super aggressive. If you look at how this game went, they blitzed Cade Klubnik on 56% of his dropbacks. Now, Cade Klubnik has never seen blitz numbers like that in his career, and he's now started 1 million games. So he's never seen anything quite like that before. And Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator, said, hey, we got athletes, we got dudes, we're going to heat you up. And it did not go well for Clemson as a result. The ability to not just be aggressive, but to stop the run en route to the passer, also really encouraging. To hold Clemson that low as far as their rushing output is pretty impressive as well. To think that they were able to hold Clemson to just 10 points was remarkable. That was Clemson's worst offensive output at home since 2010. The fact that they invested a tremendous amount of money in their defense this year really paid dividends in this game. I look at Nussmeier. He's still the straw that stirs the drink for this LSU team. Like, if they're going to go and win the whole thing, he's going to have to be really, really good. He was, I think, much better in the second half. A little bit shaky early on, but that's just kind of feeling out process. There's been buzz about him being banged up, having the knee issue in camp, having an abdominal issue leading into the game. Didn't practice a ton this past week by all accounts. So Maybe there was a little rust there, but he started to really get going. I thought some of the ball placement was excellent. I thought there were some really, really good moments for him as they move forward. So you take that combination, a physically disruptive defense with a veteran quarterback that can take over the game, that's a national championship winning recipe. I'm really optimistic about what I saw from the LSU Tigers. Now, on the other side, talk Clemson just for a half second. I think there's plenty to figure out. I think there's plenty to kind of address. I still think this team is a playoff team. I still think this team will play well and will get things ironed out, but they got to have more answers for pressure. They have to find balance offensively. If they can't run the football, that's going to be a problem. And we have wondered now for a little bit with their running back situation, the lack of depth at running back, the offensive line's inability to get a push. Is that going to be a problem when they're playing against some of the best teams in the ACC? And then when they get to the playoff, if they get to the playoff, will they be able to create balance against some of the best teams in the country? That's a legitimate question. So we will watch that one closely, but some things to figure out for Clemson. I think they'll be fine. But like I said, biggest takeaway here is that LSU is a legitimate national championship contender. Let's go to takeaway number 4. Nobody is talking about this, but I will, because I watched both sides of the ball. I watched every single snap and went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Florida State might be a legitimate problem in the ACC. I'm just telling you. Everybody wants to talk about Bama. That's fine. Let everybody else talk about Bama. But here on Always College Football, we are going to acknowledge tremendous play before we break down others. What I saw from Florida State was really, really impressive. Okay? We all know what they're coming off of, right? We all know what the season looked like last year. But looking at how much better they were from last year to this year from a physicality standpoint, off the charts. They were 10 times more physical in this game. That defensive aggressiveness that we saw along the defensive front. And when I watched that game, and I'm seeing defensive linemen punch Alabama offensive linemen and seeing heads pop back, that's violence. That's striking. And they did that time and time again throughout the game. And it wasn't just exclusive to the offensive and defensive lines. There were moments early in the game, if you really go and watch it, it was actually got called back. It was a hold on one of the wide receivers or one of the tight ends to the right-hand side. But there was a wide receiver or a tight end that was actually cracking back on Alabama, and it was a wide receiver tight end, and absolutely destroyed one of Alabama's linebackers. Like, plays like that leave a lasting impression for me, and guess what? For everyone else that will watch Florida State moving forward this year. But what makes them extremely dangerous is that what I saw from Thomas Castellanos is very exciting if you are a Florida State fan, because we know he's super dynamic with his legs. That's not news. It's always been that way. Florida State fans might know better than anybody just how dynamic he was with his legs, because we watched an elite Florida State team 2 years ago defensively get carved up by Thomas Castellanos single-handedly in like the third week of the season. You'll remember that? I think he ran for like 100 yards on third down alone. And that was when Jared Verse was on the field and all these unbelievable defenders. We know he has that attribute. We know he has that ability. But if you actually watch some of the throws in this game, whether it's in the third down execution, first drive of the game, second drive of the game, deep ball down the right sideline, diving catch, really nice throw. Second half, hitting the vertical route that led to a huge play down the right sideline. Excellent throw. I mean, these are big time throws. Even the first third down of the game, I think it was incomplete, but it was thrown right into the body of the wide receiver down the field. I mean, these are not high percentage throws, and the accuracy was excellent. I was really encouraged by what I saw. I thought the backs ran super physical. I thought the offensive line looked 100 times better than they have at any point in the last couple of years. I think their quarterback, they have the answer there. He really played well, and if he could continue to play at that level, man, we're talking about a legitimate ACC contender. I mean, a real ACC contender. And honestly, I think if you really watch how they played defense, I mean, the coverage was pretty sticky. I thought the linebackers flowed really well. I thought they were excellent up front defensively. I thought they really mixed things up and created some confusion. There's a lot to build on there from this Florida State team. So really optimistic about what I saw. They should feel great about their performance and now their newfound commitment to running the football and the level of physicality that they displayed throughout that game, man, was awesome. So tremendous credit. So takeaway number 4, Florida State might be a legitimate problem in the ACC. Takeaway number 5, Alabama has a lot of work to do. Now, here's the beauty. It's week 1. There's a 12-team playoff. You have tons of time to get things addressed. Tons, okay? Lots. But here was what was most disturbing for me in watching some of this game is that some of the things that got them last year, right? Some of the misdirection, some of the stuff with horizontal rushing attack married up with internal rushing attack, married up with poor angles defensively, married up with guys that couldn't really get out of their 2-point stance, kind of waiting to kind of find the ball, couldn't find the ball. All the same things that were somewhat problematic in some of their worst performances defensively last year kind of raised their ugly head again. So look, it got them last year and it got addressed a little bit as the season went along. Now here you are in 2025. Some of the same things that were problematic last year continue to be problematic again. But I look at the quarterback, Ty Simpson. I thought Ty Simpson actually had a solid day. Couple of decisions that I think he'd probably like to have back. A couple of throws that were probably not the most well-advised throws. Did think he had a couple misses on some downfield throws that were just a little bit off the mark, but that's to be expected. Like if you look at Ty Simpson's performance in this game, he was not at all the reason why Alabama lost this football game. Like he did a lot of decent things. I thought the pass protection was suspect from time to time. I didn't think the receivers played great. More on them here in just a minute. I also don't think they were able to get a whole lot going on the run game. So this Alabama team is only going to go as far as their best players. If their best players don't play well, it's going to be challenging for them to get back to the level that they're trying to get to. So if Caden Proctor, their left tackle, has his hands full and is not playing very well, that's a huge problem. If the offensive line, which is supposed to be a strength of the team, is not able to consistently generate enough push, that's going to be a problem. If the wide receivers are not running great routes, that's a huge issue because the wide receivers are supposed to be the strength of the team. Like I said, more on them here in just a minute. I do think that the linebackers need to play a little faster. I also think that there were times where the pass rush really was non-existent. So they got to figure out a way to rush the passer without having to blitz and overload the protection. And then in the secondary, there were just a couple of big mistakes where guys are getting outflanked, their eyes are not in the right place and things like that. Here's the biggest problem, though, with the performance from Alabama this weekend. And it can get addressed. That's the beauty. Is all these things can be fixed. There has to be more effort at a few different spots. There are a couple plays in the game. We won't single out individual players, and we certainly won't single out exact moments in the game. But these players know when they watch the tape, they'll be able to look at it. There were times in the game in which a guy was not running with 100% effort to a ball carrier. There was a time or 2 or 3 or 5 where the wide receiver is not running the route at full speed. There were times when guys were kind of gliding out of their break. Ty thinks it's going to be there, and the guy doesn't get his head around because he's not going through it at 100%. So I think that they need to, whether they were fatigued or they were tired from camp or whatever, or maybe they just felt slow, like whatever the day was, they didn't wake up on the right side of the bed, whatever it was, there needs to be a little bit better finish, I think, from wide receivers and DBs in particular as they're moving forward in the season. And part of that gives credit to Florida State because they were able to create confusion. But a lot of that has to do with just effort and just finishing and doing things like that. And if they do a better job of that, they will be in a great position. But there were a couple big plays created because of poor angles by defenders and a lack of full speed finish by some of the guys on the defensive side. And then there were a few plays left on the field because wide receivers weren't where they were supposed to be when Ty thought they were going to be there. So a lot to clean up, but all things that are very fixable, but it needs to get addressed quickly because it doesn't get much easier for the Tide with Wisconsin coming to town in a couple weeks and then Georgia 4 weeks from now. Okay, takeaway number 6. The SEC is wide open. Now, I don't really know how other way to describe what we're seeing right now. And look, a lot of this has to do with, well, okay, we know LSU's legit. We've established that, correct? But the team that was picked to finish first and or third in the league, depending on what publication you use, Alabama and Texas were picked by many to win their respective leagues. Both now are starting the season 0-1. So the league is wide open. Now, I loved what I saw from Georgia. Loved it. I thought there was a lot to like there, granted against lesser competition, but still very efficient, very effective. Love that. A lot to like from what we witnessed from Florida. I thought there was a lot. I thought Tennessee, by the way, granted, I think there were some aspects of Tennessee's game where we can maybe tweak and maybe kind of pinpoint a moment or two, but they showed resilience. They showed, I think the offense looked very, very solid. What about Auburn? What Auburn was able to do on Friday night and the dynamic threat that is Jackson Arnold's legs and things like that. Like, I thought Auburn actually looked about as good as just about anybody in the entire SEC outside of LSU. So here we are looking at the SEC slate, and there's a handful of other teams that we still need to get to. Now, full disclosure, I haven't seen South Carolina yet. They're about to play in about 2.5 hours or so from when we're taping this. So not including them in this conversation. So I don't know if they've won or lost. Well, no, because they haven't played. But the other teams of significance too, though, all right? I mean, I think A&M, some things to iron out. Didn't get to watch the game in its entirety, but at some point I will, and we'll revisit that. But I think that this race, and it's about kind of like what we expected. The SEC is probably 10, 11, 12 deep with teams that can really play up and against just about anybody. But how will they be able to kind of handle things moving forward? So the SEC is deep. It's wide open. The fact that the favorite in the league now is 0-1, the fact that the third favorite in the league is now 0-1, I think LSU kind of proved to everybody they're not taking the backseat to anyone in the league this year. This is going to get very, very interesting. Because if we're really doing power rankings in the SEC after week one, how do you shake it out? Do you have Georgia 1 probably? Do you have LSU 2? Do you have LSU 1? Do you have Georgia 2 just because LSU did it on the road against quality competition? Do you have Florida ahead of Texas? Is Texas still 3, or are there too many concerns with Texas? How far does Bama fall? Where is Auburn in the mix with how they performed against quality team that won 8 games last year on the road in week one in a hostile environment? So I think there's a lot to learn from some of these teams. I think Tennessee, like I said, they played a 10-win team from a year ago. There were good moments. There were also some things to clean up, but I'm pretty optimistic about how they harassed the opposing quarterback and how that could translate as the season goes along. So a lot to iron out in the SEC right now, but the league race is about as wide open as I can ever remember, especially seeing some of the challenges that some of the top teams had in Alabama and Texas. So we'll watch that race very closely. Let's go to takeaway 7. Guess what? Conference races are already starting to kind of showcase themselves. All right, let's start in the ACC. We have not seen Miami play just yet. Miami will tee it up against Notre Dame in about 6.5 hours. So we'll see what they do. So we can revisit this here in just a bit. And guess what? The magic of television, we will have a full breakdown here in a couple in about 12 hours between Notre Dame and Miami. So stay tuned. It's still on the show. Stick around for that. But if you look at the ACC, we'll see what happens with Miami. But Clemson is vulnerable, no? Like, tell me right now, after watching Clemson, who was the not unanimous, but pretty much everyone's pick to win the ACC, now that they were unable to run the football, now that they were unable to generate a ridiculous amount of consistency affecting the opposing quarterback with their strong defensive line, now that they weren't able to kind of hold up in protection against a really aggressive front, is the door open now for a Miami, for a Florida State, for a team that we don't know about just yet? I think it could very well be. So now what looked like it was kind of a 1-horse, 2-horse race for the ACC crown might be able to go a little deeper. Do you include an SMU in that race? Do you include a Florida State in that race? Is Louisville a team that now could potentially take advantage of Clemson? They beat them last year, and they'll have them again this year. So it's going to be fascinating to watch the ACC, but the Big 12 as well. Look, the Big 12, we all knew that this is a really, really wide open league. It always has been. Nothing's going to change. I love this league because of that reason. You could go from the top spot to the bottom spot to the top spot, and that's just the way it goes. But if you really look at it, the team that looked like they were on a warpath this weekend was Utah. And what's been the question about Utah the last couple years? And I know we can take the performance against a lackluster UCLA team with a slight grain of salt, but the issue with Utah has never been defensively. The issue with Utah over the last few years is, can they manufacture points? Well, based on what I saw, the comfort level and the rhythm that we saw from Devin Dampier, I chose Utah to win the Big 12 in the preseason because I thought the offense was going to be much, much better. Full disclosure, I did not think the offense was going to look this good this early. That was a ridiculously impressive performance last night, and one that can be built upon, because if you look at their offensive line, they were mowing people off the ball. The quarterback has always been dynamic. He was, again, in his debut as the starting quarterback of the Utes. I thought there was a lot to like about Arizona State, a lot to clean up too, but for the most part, man, that's a team that's not going anywhere. I really like so far what I've seen from Iowa State. They look outstanding. I actually, even in a losing effort, there was a lot to like about Baylor and what their quarterback can do, and Sawyer Robertson. So he throws for 400, and granted, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. They didn't have a ton of balance, and the defense struggled, and they gave up a kick return. But if it comes down to quarterback play by itself, outside of maybe Dampier, who was more impressive than Sawyer Robertson in week 1? So there's a lot to look at there in the Big 12. I think the league is outrageously deep, and we'll go to the Big 10. The Big 10 is exactly what we thought it'd be. Really, really top-heavy, really exciting. Still questions about a couple teams. I mean, there are questions about Michigan. I liked what I saw offensively. The question with Michigan this year is, how improved will they be offensively? I liked what I saw. For Ohio State, it's a little different looking than what it's been in the past. It's not a high-flying offensive attack. It's a rugged, lunch-pail, defensive-led football team, which I love, and I think will translate to victories for Ohio State this year. It's just a little bit different than what I've come to anticipate. I look at Penn State, not a lot to learn off of their week 1 opponent and their week 1 matchup, so we'll watch them and monitor them moving forward. I watched Oregon. Loved what I saw offensively. Actually loved what I saw defensively, because they're playing against one of the best FCS teams. Granted, FCS, one of the best FCS teams a year ago running the football, and Oregon was completely dominant up front. So a great spot to be, but how deep does that well go? And the bottom of the Big 10 continues to be a little bit of a problem. That's been acknowledged for quite a while. The bottom of the Big 10 remains a problem, but I'm curious about that middle tier. That middle tier, the Nebraskas of the world, who had a gutsy win on Thursday night. The Illinois of the world, who looked outstanding against lesser competition. The Indianas of the world, outstanding against lesser competition. There's things to clean up for Indiana, but still very, very solid start. So just looking at everything across the board, the Big 10 appears yet again to be really, really top heavy. Takeaway number 8. I thought quarterback debuts were very much a mixed bag. Dante Moore, outstanding, right? Distributed 10 different wide receivers, looked in complete control, showed great command, was a distributor, did a lot of really nice things in his debut as the Oregon quarterback. I don't think anybody had a better debut at their new place than Thomas Castellanos. Thomas Castellanos was off the charts good for Florida State. Super dynamic with his legs, accurate on some of the downfields. Really, really enjoyed watching that young man play. I think there's a lot of room for him to continue to grow. And I'm telling you, man, by season's end, he could be one of the sneaky dark horse Heisman Trophy contenders. I mean, tell me after week 1 who had a better performance against real competition. Very few players, that's for sure. What about Joey Aguilar? I thought it was an outstanding debut. Lot to like. Thought he showed some scramble ability. Thought he was accurate on some downfield throws. Created a couple big plays. So very, very excited about what I saw from Joey Aguilar. I look at Bryce Underwood. Very solid debut. about what you would expect, about what you would want for a true freshman starting his first game. Very steady, a lot to clean up, but a lot to really like with how he threw the football. What about Bear Bachmeier? First true freshman to start a season opener ever in the history of BYU, and goes out and demolishes the opposition, puts up nearly 70 in the process. Very, very solid start for Bear Bachmeier and others. Thought Julian Sand did exactly what he needed to do. He was smart, he was methodical, he was a distributor, he didn't take unnecessary risks, he was accurate, he put the ball where it needed to go, and he did not take any chances. He knew his defense was playing great. Let's not get too aggressive. Let's just put the ball where it needs to be. He also had a couple drops, I think, in the game, so this number could have looked a little better. I mean, Jeremiah Smith had 2 drops. Max Clare had a drop. So the numbers maybe not necessarily indicative of how accurate Julian Sand was throughout this game. So very, very excited about what I saw from him as well. And then Arch Manning. I think Arch Manning is going to be unfairly characterized a little bit off this performance. Did he miss some throws? Yes. Did he miss some opportunities? Yes. But people were just waiting. Like the Sharks were circling to be overly critical from this performance in the event in which Texas lost the game. Like you knew that was coming. So it was not surprising to me to see some of the takeaways that people have had. I'm just saying, be careful doubting this young man. There was more good in the tape than I originally thought. Now, I don't think he's a guy that you want to lean too heavily on in the red zone run game. I don't think he's a guy that is going to just take over the game with his legs. But I thought some of the movement in the pocket, some of the poise, a few of the decisions, I think a couple things he would probably like back. One throw that was intercepted, one throw that was nearly intercepted, and it was overruled when they checked the replay review. But just everything's got to happen just a little bit quicker for him. If he can get rid of the ball just a little bit quicker, and maybe in some cases not get rid of the ball, just maybe hold on the ball just a little bit longer in other cases to allow some routes to develop, he's going to be in great shape. First thing he's got to do, though, that protection up front, he's got to trust that. And for him to be able to distribute some of those big plays and to hit some of those players downfield, that's going to be what we need to watch. So lot to like, I think, but also a lot to clean up for Arch Manning. But it's a starting point against top-tier competition. So I think he'll be much, much better here in the weeks to come now that he's seen what might be the best defense in the sport. See where he's going to go from this point forward. And then finally, Nico Iamaleava. I watched the game. It was not good. I also thought there were a couple of throws that he'd probably love to have back. I also thought there were a couple of throws that were pretty good, and the receivers weren't able to reel them in. But UCLA, they couldn't get anything going. And the protection was substandard. The wide receivers, not great, not super consistent. The ball placement, not great. So that's one to watch moving forward because we know Nico has talent. That's never been debated. He's got talent, but the consistency has been the problem. The consistency was, again, the problem in his debut for the UCLA Bruins. All right, back here at the hotel. Just finished up calling another edition of Notre Dame Miami. It was awesome to be a part of. Loved it. Was an incredible atmosphere there at Hard Rock Stadium. Let's kind of put a bow on the week. We told you magic of television. We taped the earlier portions of the show about 12 hours ago. So here we are, 12:30 at night, because the grind doesn't stop on Always College Football. You call a game, great. So what? What's next? Let's just put a bow on the podcast for our Monday takeaways and the 10 things we've learned. Let's start with Notre Dame. Or let's start with Miami. They won the game. Very, very impressed with what I saw from them in many, many aspects of the game. The offensive line did a good job most of the night, keeping Carson Beck upright and clean. Thought there were times when the run game felt like it was going. Statistically, the run game didn't look great, but if you look at how they kind of were able to establish the line of scrimmage, dent the line of scrimmage of Notre Dame's defensive line, there's a lot of positives in there, I think, with how they ran the football. But Carson Beck is the takeaway for sure. He looked so poised and comfortable and in control. Never felt like there was a moment in which he was rattled, and we know how good that defense is for Notre Dame, especially against the pass, how talented that secondary is. Said for a long time, I still think it's the most talented secondary coming into the season, and it certainly lived up to expectations at times, but my goodness, the amount of good decisions that were made by Carson Beck tonight was off the charts. There weren't a lot of big plays created, but he was patient. He took what the defense gave him. He found and located guys when it was man coverage from Notre Dame. He knew exactly where the man beaters were. He involved Malachi Toney throughout the game, finally to the point where Notre Dame had to abandon the original plan, take Leonard Moore, arguably the best corner in the country, and slide him inside to play against a true freshman there in the slot. It says a lot about the respect that Notre Dame was giving to that young, talented star. Very excited about what his career is going to look like. That kid's going to play a lot of football for a very long time. I look at the Miami defense and the improvements with Corey Heatherman coming over, being more multiple, mixing it up. You think when you watch them last year, how many yards they gave up, how often they were out of position, how often they busted plays, how often they missed tackles. It was constant, especially down the stretch. Last 5-6 games felt like they were constantly on their heels. There was not many moments tonight where you felt like they were. I look at how there was one bust, and it was a big bust. They gave up Eli Raridan down the left sideline, lost him in coverage, linebacker lost him, and it was a huge play and almost a catastrophic mistake, but that was the only one. Last year, you could count 3-4 times a game in which there was cheap yardage given up. They're also, I feel like they did a great job in the secondary tackling, much better than what it was at any point. There were better angles, they were more sound, and that defensive line feasted as the game went along. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor completely took over the game in the final 2-minute drive. Those guys were fantastic. So very, very encouraged by what I saw from Miami. A lot of people are going to ask, are you surprised by how Miami played? And the answer is no. I had Miami in the playoff this year. I look at their personnel and how they stack up from a talent profile standpoint, and they can go with just about anybody. They have a veteran quarterback. They have a disruptive defensive line. They have an elite offensive line. They have a power run game that's difficult to contain and difficult for many teams to match up against. And I think they are, in many ways, improved at wide receiver from where they were a year ago, which is crazy to think just how good those wideouts were last year and how they might be better with the addition of some key freshmen and a couple of guys via the transfer portal. So I think Miami, not just are they a playoff contender, I think they could legitimately make a run and be a potential player for the national championship. I think that team has that type of ceiling. We'll go to the other side, Notre Dame. There's going to be disappointment amongst Notre Dame fans, understandably, right? They lost the game. But I think if you look at it from a glass half full perspective, there's a lot of good. What was the big question about Notre Dame coming into the game? It was the quarterback, right? CJ Carr, with kind of a unique plan early on of short passing attack, he kind of grew up before our eyes. He showcased some mobility that we weren't really sure he had. He was able to keep some plays alive, did a good job in scramble drill, did have the interception, but that was really more of a great defensive play than it was a poor throw or a poor decision. There were a couple things he'd probably like to have back. For a first start, though, against a new defensive coordinator when you're preparing all week and you're not really knowing what you're going to get, I thought he handled the environment really well. I do think there are some areas along the offensive line that need to be cleaned up, especially in pass protection. But that was a group that played better as the season went along last year. I would anticipate much the same as that group continues to grow with their cohesiveness. I do think there needs to be more of a point made to get Malachi Fields the ball. Now, he did have the fumble early on. He did have the miraculous catch down the right sideline a little later on. There were some good moments from him, but that guy's a difference maker. He needs to get more looks. He probably needs to get more touches, and they need to manufacture ways to get him in one-on-one situations because he's going to win those contested catch situations. The other guy that I think needs to be more involved in the future is Jeremiah Love. Now, they bottled him up in the run game pretty good at times, but some of the looks that Jadarian Price got there on the edges where they're kind of running off tackle, I don't feel like Jeremiah Love got enough touches on the edges, on the perimeter. I think they tried to take the fight right to Miami, and Miami was up to the task. So perimeter run game is going to be something I think they'll utilize a little more as the season goes along. I look at Notre Dame's defense, and I think the goal of this offseason to become more multiple kind of played out. We saw a lot less man. We saw mixing in quite a bit of zone coverage, which is not something we saw very much of last year. At times it was helpful, and at times it was not really well played. there were a couple easy third downs given up because they decided to get in zone. So I'll be curious to see as Chris Ash, the new defensive coordinator, continues to get to know his personnel. I bet you anything they'll probably revert back to becoming a little bit more man-centric. Now, they have the base zone principles installed in the event in which they're playing against Jeremiah Smith, for example, and they're going to now, they can't in 4 days implement a brand new style of defense. Well, you don't want to play man coverage against Jeremiah Smith, right? You want to play some zone. Well, they did that and focused on that all off season, and they were more multiple, but it did leave them vulnerable at times against a veteran quarterback in Carson Beck. So we'll see how this Notre Dame defense evolves as the season goes along, because I would imagine we'll see more man here moving forward because they still have lockdown coverability on the outside. Takeaway from Notre Dame, nothing is lost at this point. They lost a hard-fought battle on the road. It happens in college football. This is a breakthrough win for Miami, no doubt about it. But if you look at Notre Dame, they have responded really well to adversity in the past, and I would imagine they will again in the future. They also, within this game, responded to adversity tremendously well. There was a period in the game in which Miami had the ball for 13, 14 minutes, and Notre Dame had the ball for 12 seconds, and that was to take a knee at the end of half. They also took from that point, that 13-minute span, it went from a tie ball game at 7-7 to 21-7. The game could have gotten sideways in an instant. But this Notre Dame team, you can just never count out. They make the plays, they climb back in the game, and all of a sudden it becomes interesting there down the stretch. So I still remain extremely optimistic about what the Irish can accomplish, but tonight was Miami's night to reassert itself as one of the most talented teams in college football. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. You guys that are here with us tonight, this morning, whenever you're listening, we have set a record for the longest time spent recording a singular podcast. Starting at about midday on Sunday, finishing here in the wee hours on a Monday morning, on Labor Day Monday morning. But what we've always said in the business here at television, and while we were playing football, we labor on Labor Day. That's for sure. We will continue to do so for all of you wonderful listeners out there. So from all of us here at Always College Football, from Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.